Arcosic wake or feldspathic wake, and it can be a quartz wake. So a gray wake can also again be of three different types. Number one is lith wake, second feldspathic wake, third quartz wake. Now you understand, actually quartz wake is a sub-variant of the gray wake. And it all depends upon, because how the gray wake is formed. I said that the gray wake is mostly found in the ancient turbidite succession. Again, I said that the present day turbidites, they are of lith arenitic in composition. Lith arenitic in composition. Then how the gray wakes are present in the ancient turbidite succession? By means of the decomposition of the unstable fragments, that is the feldspar or lithic fragment in the geological time scale that created the matrix in the rock. So you understand that the matrix of gray wake is essentially a diagenetic matrix. It is not a proto-matrix that is deposited with the framework. It is not that kind of matrix. It is a diagenetic matrix which is formed by the decomposition of the unstable mineral grains. Now, if originally the sediment which was getting deposited in the source area, it was a quartz dominant source area. It had some amount of unstable fragments, suppose maybe feldspar or lithic fragment, but they are subordinate in volume, but it was a majority, suppose a quartz reef or that kind of a system, but which was also associated with some unstable grain. If that is the kind of situation from where the sediment is supplied, where the framework grains constitute more than 95% quartz, framework grain constitute more than 95% quartz, and there is the matrix content more about 15%, then you call it a quartz wake. That means in the source, the framework source, that the quartz was the dominant source, and that's why when you are getting it finally in the rock, you are getting the quartz grains as angular fragments of quartz grain embedded within the dark colored matrix of the rock. That is what we call the quartz wake. This is how I can explain that yes, a quartz wake, mineralogically quartz and the wake, that is the matrix, they are present at the same place simultaneously, which otherwise is very difficult to explain.
Sir, what can be the provenance of the quartz wake?
That is what I am saying. Na? Your quartz may be supplied from a quartz reef, and a quartz reef that may be formed along with some unstable mineral grains. Suppose a quartz reef is an isolated body of a reef, and the associated places that is containing the unstable mineral grains. So quartz reef, it is a reefal body. So when you use a reefal body, that is a convex sub body, and that is an isolated body. So that quartz reef may be supplying the quartz, but the associated sediment body is supplying, or the associated volcanic body. I can have a quartz reef associated with a volcanic rock, because quartz reef is essentially volcanic in origin. So a quartz reef associated with a volcanic rock, and if that is supplying the sediment. So quartz reef is dominantly supplying, volcanic rock is subordinately supplying. And then you are getting something. So the lithic volcanic fragments, they are decomposing, but the quartz reef that the grain supplied by quartz reef, that will not decompose because it is essentially quartz. So that is the kind of situation where I will get a quartz. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, saying so, we now will discuss that. So now, if we see the whole sediment range, suppose the quartz arenite, the arkose, the lith arenite, quartz wake, gray wake, are all these sediment. So essentially, what we are basically getting, we in the process of immatured rock to matured rock. So a matured rock is the quartz arenite, and the immature rock, that is your arkose, your lith wake, your gray wake, and all these things. So in the process, what are the things that we are getting, that from immature stage to the matured stage, what are the changes that a sediment undergoes? Three major changes that a sediment undergoes. Number one, it get rid of the matrix or the clay fraction. This is number one, that it get rid of its clay. I will draw a diagram and show you. It get rid. Number two, the non-clay portion, within the non-clay portion, the degree of sorting increases. In the non-clay portion, degree of sorting increases. And number three, in the non-clay portion, the grains attain more and more roundness. These are the three major changes. And if I draw the diagram, and then I will explain it to you. This is the figure. This is the figure. This figure is also available in the book of Sandbox. You can also get it from the Sandbox book. I have just drawn the figure for you. You can also draw here. You want to draw here, or you want to see it in the Sandbox book?
So we will draw here. Please wait for some
Okay,
time.
okay. So I am keeping it, but please tell me if you want to have the paper little up or down, whatever you want, I will do that. Please let me know once it is done. ক্লাস নিচ্ছি রে অনলাইন।
ও ঠিক আছে ঠিক আছে।
If you don't understand what is written, please tell me. I will read it out.
So,
Hello.
sir, what is written in the vertical axis?
In the vertical axis, it is written degree of process, and by horizontal arrow, it is written that the process completed. Degree of process and process completed. On the horizontal line, input of kinetic energy.
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, so it is done. So now I am explaining, you can see the figure. Actually, what is happening in the figure, it is attempted to show you how with the input of kinetic energy. Now, what is kinetic energy? Kinetic energy is the different weathering process, erosional process, that the flow process through which it has been subjected. In the flow process, suppose wave reworking, current reworking, all these process together, we have clubbed all the process that we call it the kinetic process. And what this all process will do, the all process, they will try to make the immature sediment to the mature sediment, because more and more the textural maturity will be attained, the mineralogical maturity will be attained. And suppose I start with granite. Granite initially will be shedding quartz and potash feldspar. Now potash feldspar is unstable, quartz is stable. Now that, so first sediment, what will be forming out of granite is arkose. Now that arkose will again be recycled, it becomes subarkose. And then subarkose again will be recycled, so it becomes quartzarenite. So like that, the unstable fragments goes away. So all these are the kinetic energy. Now, I have already discussed there are three processes. One, there is a clay removal process. So clay will be essentially much in the immature stage. And from the submature stage, you will see that the clay is largely removed. You see the sorting process till submature end, the sorting remains poor. But once you cross the submature boundary, enter into the mature boundary, your sediment starts gaining the better sorting, and that sorting you get in the mature and the super mature. Roundness, it actually is attained much late. In fact, to attain a very good roundness of grain, you have to go up to the super mature stage. So the different criteria of the maturity, it is attained at the different stage of its kinetic energy completion. And that is what is the removal of clay. So essentially the maximum removal you get in the immature, but then some amount of removal you get in the submature, but the entire process get completed at the initiation of the mature stage. There is no removal of the clay in the mature stage. Before that, all the clay are removed. Sorting and roundness, these two process goes on. These two process goes on and goes on up to the super mature. The better you get the super mature, your sorting and roundness, the better you have the sorting and roundness. They go on and make the sediment more mature. So these are the process which basically cause the sediment. So and we discussed also that a quartz arenite is necessarily be a polycyclic rock. You cannot have a single cycle generation of a quartz arenite because it has to be a polycyclic rock. Okay. Now, this is what I thought of discussing about the sandstone. Now we come on to conglomerate. Okay. Is it okay? The sandstone may, if there is any question on sandstone, you can ask. Okay. So then we go to conglomerate. Now conglomerate, why I discuss, if you see the Earth's upper shell, that made up of sediments, the maximum volume of the sedimentary rock that constitutes the Earth's upper shell, that is actually shell. जो हम लोगों ने discuss अभी तक किए ही नहीं. Shell, that is the mud rock. Then the sandstone. Why mud rock? Because the huge ocean, and the ocean below the wave base, the entire sediment is the shell. And that is why if I consider the entire surface area of the earth and volumetrically, which rock constitutes the maximum volumetrically, the maximum volume of the sediment cover of the earth, that is shell. I will come to that, how we discuss the shell. Then comes the sandstone, which we have discussed. And then comes the conglomerate. Conglomerate is the lowest volumetric proportion among the three. Conglomerate is the lowest volumetric proportion among the three. Now, all this what I am discussing now is the clastic sedimentary rock. I am not going to the chemical sedimentary rock. That is a different story altogether. Our discussion only is the clastic sedimentary rock till now. Now, conglomerate. Now, conglomerate, they are of different type. And conglomerates are described based on its clast composition and matrix composition. What is a conglomerate? Where the grains are of pebble, granule, cobble size or boulder size. Rather than sand size, I am getting the higher size. So I call it a conglomerate. I am getting pebble, I am getting granule, I am getting cobble, I am getting boulder. Sand here, if present, that is present as a matrix. That is present as a matrix, not as the framework grain. Sand, if present here, present as a matrix, not as a framework grain. Okay, that's why I am calling it a conglomerate. Now, this matrix may be sandy also in a conglomerate. The matrix may be clay or muddy also in a conglomerate. So it can be a sandy conglomerate, it can be a muddy conglomerate. It depends upon what is the grain size of the matrix. Fine. Now, the clast, the pebble, cobble, boulder, granule. Now, all these class, they are of single composition or multiple composition. If they are all of single composition, we call it oligomictic conglomerate. Oligomictic. 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 So when you have all the class of same composition, suppose all the class are of quartzite composition, quartz pebble conglomerate. We also call it quartz pebble conglomerate. If you see the Sinbhum stratigraphy, there is horizon which is named quartz pebble conglomerate. Now, what is actually happening in that conglomerate, quartz pebble conglomerate? Why so much of quartz? It must be coming from a quartzitic country. It must be coming from a quartz reef. So you have so much of dominance of quartz class. So if you have only single type of class, you call it oligomictic. If there are multiple kind of class, you call it polymictic. So oligomictic and polymictic. This is a first order classification of conglomerate. That classes are of same composition, of different composition. Then it is a sandy matrix or muddy matrix. This is second. There is another, that is classification of conglomerate, that is, it is a class supported or a matrix supported. Whether I am getting it class supported or I am getting it matrix supported. And it has a huge relevance in terms of the process through which the conglomerate is formed. That class supported fabric or matrix supported. So classes are floating or they are actually forming the framework by supporting each other. Class supported or matrix supported. This is another. And finally, what is the geometry and the conglomerate body is base. What is the nature of its base? So the basal character of a conglomerate and the geometry of the conglomerate. All these are important. All these are important. Now, if I have a class supported conglomerate and the conglomerate is a lenticular, if I have a class support, so number one, that I have a class supported. A, B, lenticular in geometry. And C, erosional concave up base. Now there are two different cases I am saying. Number one, conglomerate is class supported. It is lenticular in geometry. It has a concave up erosional base. This is a kind of conglomerate. I can have another kind of conglomerate which is matrix supported, sheet-like geometry, and which has a planar non-erosional base. Non-erosional base. Is it clear what I am saying? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So when I talk about conglomerate, I can have two measured. This is what I have just told you. These are the two major classification of conglomerate. I can have conglomerates which are lenticular, class supported, and erosional base. I can have conglomerates which are sheet-shaped, matrix supported, non-erosional, planar non-erosional base. And they are product of two different processes, completely two different processes. The first one, which is lenticular with erosional base, those are actually the channel thalloeg deposit. Any channel and the competence failure in a channel that will always cause the largest class to be settled. What I have said in any channel, because of competence failure, the largest class, they will be settled at the bottom of the channel, and they will form a class supported conglomerate at the base of the channel, and they are called the channel lag conglomerate. Channel, and because it is channel, so it will always have a erosional concave up base. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Secondly, the second case, it is matrix supported and planar non-erosional base. That means it is a product of laminar flow. It cannot erode. It is a product of laminar flow. It is matrix supported and sheet-like. This kind of conglomerate are the product of debris flow. Debris flow, where you have the high matrix content, and the high matrix content is actually holding the class and is deposited by debris flow. I have already discussed. I am not repeating the debris flow. So you can see that the product, a conglomerate is a conglomerate. Now I have to interpret how the conglomerate is deposited. Two different processes. One, a conglomerate formed in a channelized process, a conglomerate formed by a sediment gravity flow, that is a debris flow. These two are the completely the different process, and these two processes, they make the two different kinds of conglomerate. Now, if I see that in the geological rock record, in the entire record of the earth, you can classify the conglomerates in two broad types. What I have just discussed, that whether the conglomerate is formed as a channelized body or the conglomerate is formed as a debris flow or the mass flow origin. This is the fundamental thing for a conglomerate. Now, in a conglomerate, there is another thing, that the class, they basically talk about that the provenance of, from which type of provenance the conglomerate is supplied. Because any conglomerate that is normally is the large class, they are coming from a source. So the type of class, whatever is present, that also talks about the type of provenance from where these classes are being derived. Okay. Is there any question from conglomerate? If you have any question from the conglomerate, there can be different things in a conglomerate. A conglomerate, we normally have different kinds of texture of a conglomerate. Conglomerate can be massive, where you cannot have all the class can be chaotic in distribution. You are not getting any kind of proper stratification within the conglomerate. Class are, that is one type of conglomerate which is a massive without any internal structure. That is one type. You can have the grading in conglomerate. Sometimes conglomerates show normal grading, conglomerates show reverse grading. So all these structures, I am not going into that. Conglomerate can record from massive to different kind of structure. Even you can have a conglomerate which has a granular base, and then above this base you have a normal graded top, which what we refer to as a bipartite conglomerate. A conglomerate can be again subdivided into two parts, a bipartite conglomerate. I am not going into the details of that. There is a huge literature on conglomerate. I am not going. Only thing, the basic of the conglomerate should be clear to you, that the conglomerate can be generated either in the form of a channel flow or in the form of a debris flow. This is my aim.
Sir,
yes.
सर बट डेब्री फ्लो में अगर हम देखेंगे वहाँ पे तो पुअरली सॉर्टेड होता है और इंटरनल लेयरिंग ज्यादातर नहीं होता है.
yes.
तो यहाँ पे शीट लाइक लेयरिंग कैसे होगा?
Sheet is a geometry, Avinash. Sheet is the geometry of the body. It is not. Okay. What is a sheet? Sheet is a tabular geometry of the body. I am talking about the geometry of the body, not the internal stratification. Okay, sir. Okay. Now we come on to the clay or mudstone. We are coming on to the mudstone. Now, when we talk about the mudstone, one major problem of mudstone is that when you have a mud, then identification of the size within the mud, characterization of the mud, that is under naked eye or under microscope is very, very difficult. You cannot, mud, everything, it looks like homogeneous. So essentially what happens, that the characterization of mudstone, that is done based on the XRD analysis and through scanning electron microscopy. So it is not possible from a mudstone to characterize that whether I am getting a clay stone, I am getting a mudstone, or I am getting a clay shell. What I am getting, that is actually not easy by a naked eye or under microscope. You will get a classification in the book of the Potter, Maynard, and Pryor. Potter, Maynard, M-E-Y-N-A-R-D, Potter, Maynard, and Pryor. They gave a classification of the mudstone. What they did, they said that if a mudstone, it contains 33 to 65% clay, 33 to 65% clay, and it is bedded, then you call it a mudstone. Okay? Am I clear? 33 to 65% clay and it is bedded, then you call it a mudstone. If you have 66 to 100% clay and bedded, then you call it a claystone. If you have 33 to 65% clay and laminated, then you call it a clay shell. So this is actually the bedding character and the amount of clay. This is the fundamental character that people have taken to consider the characterization of the mudstone. I will take just one minute leave and I am coming back. Okay. So this is the classification of mudstone. Now, if we do the chemical analysis of, now, when we do the chemical analysis, what we do? We actually make powder of the rock and then analyze it through XRF or by wet chemistry. We do the chemical analysis. Now, it is very difficult to analyze a conglomerate because the conglomerate, there are large clusters. How how you can do the bulk rock. If you take some sample, you may be only restricted yourself within a large boulder only. So normally you will not see that anybody geochemically characterize a conglomerate. Conglomerate geochemical characterization is not possible and no meaning also. What we do, we geochemically characterize sandstone and shale. What is shale? Shale is the lithified counterpart of mudstone. When the mudstone is lithified, then you call it a shale. So a mudstone, when it is lithified. Now I will come to the process. What is lithification? What is lithification? I will come to that discussion. Now, when you do the chemical analysis of a sandstone, what you get? You get SiO2. SiO2 normally you get about 50% to 68% SiO2. You get Al2O3. Sandstone का बोल रहा हूं मैं, sandstone. Al2O3 about 16 to 19%. You get the K2O, you get Na2O, you get P2O5, you get P2O5, you get TiO2, and some rare cases you also get MgO, MnO. You also get CaO. I just missed CaO. You also get MgO, MnO in some rare cases. In case of mudstone, what happens? That your aluminium content increases. Aluminium content that becomes about 25 to 30%, which was earlier about 16 to 20%. It goes more than 30%. Al2O3 in case of shale, because in the clay structure you have a lot of aluminium, and clay becomes a major constituent of the mudstone. So you have a Al2O3, mudstone silica percentage, it drops down to 30 to 40%. And your aluminium content, it goes up to 35 to 40%. And all other constituents that may be similar. So basic difference between the sandstone composition and the mudstone composition is the percentage of the Al2O3 and SiO2. The Al2O3 increases just because you have a high clay content. Now, where from K2O comes? K2O comes from potash feldspar. Where from Na2O comes? It comes from sodic feldspar. And where from calcium comes? Calcium comes from calcium feldspar as well as limestone. So calcium supply from the calcic plagioclase and limestone. So this is the general character when you talk about the geochemically about the sandstone and the mudstone. Okay. Now, once we have this idea that the sandstone and mudstone, then we have to think about the diagenesis of them. Now, as I have said, just a few minutes back, I told the term lithification. Now, what is lithification? That's a sediment to rock transformation. Sediment to rock transformation is a lithification. Lithi means rock formation. That is the lithification. Now, there are two processes which are important in the lithification. Number one is compaction. And number two, cementation. This is the two processes that cause lithification. Compaction and cementation. These are the two processes that basically cause the lithification. Now, This is the compaction curve. Please let me know when the drawing is complete. I just missed one thing. I just read. Is it done?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what is shown? This is the compaction. What is the effect of compaction? That is shown in this diagram. What in the horizontal axis is shown is the porosity. Now what is shown here? A mudstone, it has a depositional porosity. Mudstone has a depositional porosity as close as 60%. Whereas a sandstone has a depositional porosity about 40%, 40 to 45%. That is what is shown in this graph. Is it clear? And we'll come to why mudstone has 60% porosity, why sandstone has 40% porosity. हम लोग discuss करेंगे. We'll discuss it. And then as it is going to burial, the initial 1 to 2 kilometer depth, the decrease in porosity is very, very drastic. There is a large scale decrease in the porosity. And then as you cross 2 kilometer or 2.5 kilometer, then the porosity, it decreases, but decreases at a very slow rate. And it becomes steady. So finally, when you get a shell, a mudstone changes into a shell, or a sand changes into a sandstone, a mudstone finally reaches to a porosity about 5 to 8%. And a sandstone reaches to a porosity varying from 12 to 25%. Am I clear? Depending on case-to-case basis. It can be as low as 10 to 12. It can be as high as 20 to 25. So both sandstone and mudstone, they decrease the porosity. But the decrease of porosity in mudstone is havoc. It decreases from 6% to 5 to 8%, whereas a sandstone 40% to 12 to 15%, whatever it is. Now, this is the porosity. Actually, we are talking about the primary porosity. Now, porosity in sandstone, porosity depends on what of sandstone? Porosity depends on grain size. Is porosity depend on grain size? I want an answer.
So grain size vacuum.
Yeah, hello?
Sorted. It depends on sorting.
ना पोरोसिटी ग्रेन साइज के ऊपर डिपेंड करते हैं.
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I will explain. There is two contradictory answer. One answer is yes, one answer is no. Now, porosity, this is my statement, and this statement you should remember through your life. I will not repeat this statement. Porosity never depends on grain size. Porosity never depends on grain size. This is a statement, and I am giving this statement. Please remember through your life. Porosity depend on grain packing, grain shape, and grain sorting. What I said? Porosity depend on grain packing, grain shape, and grain sorting. This is the statement you people have written. It is clear. Now I will explain why. Suppose I take small ball and I take large ball, and I arrange the balls of both the sizes in form of cubic packing and octahedral packing and rhombohedral packing. What I said? Small ball and large ball, different size. I arrange the balls in cubic packing and rhombohedral packing. Both small ball and large ball, they will give the same porosity when they are in cubic packing, that is 48% porosity, and when they are in rhombohedral packing, that is 26% porosity. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Porosity never depends on grain size. It depends on the type of packing. A cubic packing can give it the highest porosity, 48%. A rhombohedral packing will give it a lowest porosity, that is 26%. It is this is what I am talking about, the depositional porosity. Depositional, मैं अभी depositional porosity का बात कर रहा हूँ और primary porosity का बात कर रहा हूँ. ठीक है? There can be porosity which is secondary porosity. वो बाद में मैं डिस्कस करूंगा. अभी मैं प्राइमरी पोरोसिटी का बात कर रहा हूं. Okay? Now, if I say porosity does not depend on grain size, then why mudstone has always higher depositional porosity, about 60%, and sandstone has a relatively lower 40% porosity? If it doesn't depend on grain size, mudstone की 60% porosity क्यों होता है और sandstone का 40% porosity क्यों होता है? Is my question clear? If my earlier statement is correct, hello? If my earlier statement is correct, that porosity does not depend on grain size, then this observation that mudstone always has a depositional porosity about 60% and sandstone has a depositional porosity 40-45%, how can it be valid? That becomes a question. And that is explained by means of the shape of the grain. As I said, porosity depends on grain shape. Because a mud grain, always it is carried in suspension. A mud grain carried in suspension, so it preserves its original edges and angularities. Whereas a sand grain, mostly it is carried by bed load, it sheds away all its most of its angular and edges and projections. So when mud settles, so there will be more of point contact. So a mud grain will mostly you can see two different. So this is sand, this is mud. When mud settles, they settle in the point contact. Whereas the sand, when they settle in the grain contact, surface contact. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And that is the reason that you get in a mudstone higher porosity, not because of the size, it is because of the shape. And that shape, because mud is transported in suspension, whereas sand is transported as a bed load. Okay, fine. Now, this is what we are talking about is a primary porosity. What about the secondary porosity? Secondary porosity, which is formed in sediment after its deposition. Most important secondary porosity we get in the limestone. In sandstones, the role of secondary porosity is very minimum, and secondary porosity in sandstone mostly formed when you have the original carbonate cement in sandstone. I repeat, secondary porosity is mostly we get in carbonate. In sandstone, the role of secondary porosity is low, and when a sandstone originally has a carbonate cement, that only forms the secondary porosity. If it is originally has a carbonate cement, that kind of sandstone actually forms the secondary porosity. Otherwise, sandstone में secondary porosity is very, very low. In sandstone, the relative abundance of secondary porosity is very, very low unless the sandstone has a carbonate cement. Is my statement clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what are the different kinds of? Now, first, I will discuss the different types of primary and the secondary porosity. First, start with the primary porosity. Two types. One is intergranular. Second is intragranular. Primary porosity. Two different types, intergranular and intragranular. Intergranular between the grains and intragranular within a grain. Suppose a fossil fragment, and within the fossil fragment, internally you have a porosity that is developed. Intragranular. Okay. Then comes the secondary. Secondary porosity. Most of this porosity we actually get in carbonate, not in sandstone. You can have moldic porosity, bhagi porosity, cavernous porosity, or gas release porosity. Okay, is the drawing done? I will explain.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is moldic porosity? You can see that where I have made the hatches, those are the porosity, those are the open spaces. And what are those? They are different kind of the organic tastes. Suppose you have gastropod, you have pelicipod and all this, and some of them, they are going into dissolution. So the moldic porosity, those may not be interconnected. So they are fabric selective porosity. You write moldic porosity is fabric selective porosity. Fabric selective porosity. Suppose some of the tastes, organic tastes, they are mineralogically unstable and they are going into solution. But the entirely the limestone is not going into solution. So the moldic porosities, they will be detached. They will not be interconnected. They are fabric selective. Am I clear? राजेश मैं क्लास ले रहा हूं, बाद में बात करता हूं. हेलो,
सर आपकी आवाज कट गई थी, एक बार फिर से बता दीजिए.
हाँ हाँ, moldic porosity. Now am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Moldic porosity is fabric selective porosity. Fabric selective porosity. That means that some of the grains, they are unstable. It may be a organic taste. Suppose all the gastropod shells, they are unstable mineralogically. They are going into solution. But the other things are undisturbed. So what will happen? Wherever the gastropod shell is there you will get a opening. But these openings will not be interconnected to one another. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So that is what is the moldic porosity. That means a moldic porosity can increase the porosity of a rock, but it will never increase the permeability of the rock. Because permeability actually is interconnected, porosity is the permeability. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So if the pores are not connected, how can you increase the permeability? So moldic porosity increases the porosity, but does not necessarily increase the permeability. Now coming on to the bhagi porosity. Bhagi porosity and cavernous porosity, these two are fabric inselective. ये कोई fabric मानते नहीं है. Irrespective of anything, सब कुछ dissolve कर रहा है and porosity develop कर रहा है. Irrespective of anything. So a grain, वो carbonate जब आएगा, then in the carbonate we will discuss the allochem, orthochem, irrespective of type of allochem or orthochem, we will discuss those in detail. Irrespective of type of allochem or orthochem, everything is going into dissolution. Then you call it a bhagi or cavernous. Bhagi and cavernous, these two are actually a term of scale. Cavernous is much larger than a cave. Cave is much larger than that of a bhag. Those who may be from Andhra Pradesh and all these places, you know, there are large caves that are present in the limestone country. People go there to see. There are speleothems, that is stalactite, stalagmite, all these things are available. Those are nothing but the secondary porosity in limestone. The fourth variety, that is gas escape. This is also very common, particularly for algal limestone. Those belong to the tidal flat area. They are, because of the decomposition of organic matter and the release of gas, decomposition of organic matter and release of gas, the elliptical openings are formed. Elliptical openings are formed. Why it is formed? This is formed because of the decomposition of organic matter and release of gas. The elliptical openings are formed. This is another type of, see, all this what I am discussing now, the secondary porosity. Primary porosity, I have already discussed two types, intergranular, intragranular. Intergranular porosity, I again discussed. Intergranular porosity depends on grains packing, grain size, and grain sorting. Not on grain packing, grain shape, and grain sorting, not on grain size. This we have already discussed. Intergranular. Intragranular, that I have shown, and these are the secondary porosities. Okay.
Yes.
Now see this diagram. This is a porosity permeability diagram for different kind of rock, sedimentary rock. Please let me know once drawing is complete.
सर प्लीज थोड़ा ऊपर कर दीजिए.
Huh?
Percent.
Is it done?
Yes, sir.
So in the abscissa, I have shown the permeability in millidarcy. MD is millidarcy. MD is millidarcy. And in the ordinate, the porosity in percentage. Then the different kind of situation. Suppose when the porosity and permeability is very low, that is suppose a granitic basement or any basement where a metamorphic basement where you have the very low porosity and permeability. In case of a carbonate, you can have very high porosity, but not that every time that porosity will lead to a very high permeability. It may lead to a high permeability, but that is not that every time high porosity will lead to a high permeability. If you have a moldy porosity, it will not lead to a high permeability. In case of a sandstone, तो मैं लिखना भूल गया. Sandstone. This is a sandstone, where the porosity and permeability they are commensurable to one another. If porosity increases, permeability increases. If porosity decreases, permeability decreases. In case of a sandstone, the porosity and permeability, they more or less maintain a relationship with one another, which may not be true in case of a carbonate. And you can have a very high permeability with very low porosity if you have a fractured rock. If you have a fractured rock. What the oil industry people, they often increase the permeability. You may be knowing the term fracking. Fracking. Have you heard the term fracking?
Yes, sir.
What is fracking? That is hydraulic fracturing. Any reservoir where they can estimate that it is a reservoir, but because of low permeability, that the oil is not coming. So they do the fracking. By hydraulic fracturing, they increase the permeability. Anyway, this is not the topic of the course. This is separate. Okay, fine. Now I draw another diagram. The drawing is complete, please let me know.
So below coarse is that medium sandstone.
Yeah, fine sandstone, medium sandstone, coarse and very coarse. Is it done? Can I remove the sheet?
Yes, sir.
Now, what is this? What is this? Because the arrow shows the increasing value of permeability and porosity. Okay, porosity 10 to maybe 30%, and permeability from 1 MD to 1000 or 2000 MD. So, what is happening actually? As you increase the size from fine sand to the coarse, your permeability increases. But depending, try to understand what my statement. If you increase the size, permeability increases. But if the sorting remains same, there is not much increase in the porosity. Porosity, because I said that the porosity does not depend on size. You are seeing, this is experimental curve. This is people have drawn experimental curve. With increase in the size, not much change in the porosity, but there are some appreciable change in the permeability. But with increase in sorting, there is appreciable change in the porosity. Am I clear? Is the figure clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So this relationship that the porosity permeability depends on what? That the porosity does not depend on grain size, it depends on grain sorting, grain shape, and grain packing. But permeability can be increased with the increase in the grain size. The most higher grain size, larger grain size with very well sorting is the best reservoir property. Best reservoir property. If I have a coarse to very coarse sand and very well sorted, it will have the best reservoir property. That means it will have the best possible porosity and permeability. Okay, fine. After discussing this, I again come back to my original discussion, जो मैं lithification discuss कर रहा था. Lithification discuss करते करते यहाँ तक चले आए. Now again I go back to my original lithification discussion. And I discussed the compaction. I have not yet discussed the cementation. So there are two processes. One is compaction. That means the original volume of sediment is reduced. And then there is cementation. The void spaces are filled by the precipitation of chemical sediment. There are three types of cementation. Number one, silica cementation, carbonate cementation, and iron cementation. Silica cementation, carbonate cementation, and iron cementation. And this different cementation that happens in different stages. Before because all this process of cementation, compaction, this actually happens at the stage of diagenesis. This is what is we call the diagenesis of the sediment. So how I define the stage of diagenesis of sediment? Let me define the stage of diagenesis of the sediment. This figure also available in Sandbox. You can draw it from here or you can see it from the Sandbox. Should I hold it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If somewhere you find difficulty in reading, just ask me, I will read it out. Should I read it out? Some of the text.
No,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
So can you read out the pressure values, hydrostatic
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
geostatic?
I am just telling you. The top line is the geothermal gradient, 30 degrees centigrade per kilometer, and the bottom line and the last line is the geothermal gradient, 10 degrees centigrade per kilometer. Then the second line, that is 104 bar per kilometer, that is the geostatic pressure or lithostatic pressure. That is what is talking about, 104 bar per kilometer. And the next is 244 bar per kilometer is the hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure. So it is a pressure temperature diagram. So what is shown is the geothermal gradient curve of 10 degrees centigrade per kilometer and 30 degrees centigrade per kilometer, and two pressure curve, that is the geostatic pressure or lithostatic pressure of 104 bar per kilometer and 244 bar per kilometer. These two are shown, and on that the diagenesis, contact metamorphism, low-grade metamorphism, and regional metamorphism, all the fields that has been demarcated. And you can see the entire process of diagenesis, that is the cementation and the compaction, that is essentially it is limited within 200 to 250 degrees centigrade, and it is limited to about 5 to 10 kilometer depth with 2 to 4 kilobar pressure. This is the condition of diagenesis. So 2 to 4 kilobar pressure, the temperature about 200 to 250 degrees centigrade, and a depth of 5 to 10 kilometer. This is actually the domain, not 5 to 10, I should say 4 to 6 kilometer. This is actually the domain of the diagenesis, where you beyond that you get the domain of the metamorphism. And in the diagenesis, the two process which is most important is the compaction and cementation. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So this diagram, through this diagram, what I wanted to convey is the domain of diagenesis and the main processes that is. There is another diagram actually. You draw it, then I am explaining. In this diagram, what is attempted that the compaction and cementation both are shown with respect to the depth. The first column, that is showing that how the porosity is reduced. How the porosity is reduced Second column is showing the top that the carbonate cementation, it starts very early. Your silica cementation, it starts at a depth 4 to 6 kilometers. But carbonate cementation, it is very early, and at the depositional stage, syn depositional stage, you get the carbonate cement. You cannot get a carbonate cementation at depth. At depth, carbonate cement may go into dissolution, but it cannot form. A silica cement can form at depth. And iron cement, they actually form not during burial, but during the exhumation. During exhumation, the iron cement form, and the iron cement normally forms around 3 to 4 kilometer depth. But silica cementation, it goes on from 4 to 6 kilometer depth. So both your compaction and cementation, these two, attempt has been made to show you that how with respect to depth, these different processes, they operate, and combinedly they form the lithification of the rock.
तो
Am I-
प्लीज थोड़ा पेज ऊपर कर दीजिए तो
हाँ।
बाई एक्सेस नहीं लिखा यस नो सर थोड़ा ऊपर कर दीजिए पेज तो थोड़ा सा और यस सर थैंक यू
Sir,
Yes.
sir, we have another class at
Okay.
11:30.
Okay. So I stop here in this class. And we have a practical class. At what time you will start the practical class? 2:30?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
So at 2:30 in practical class, we are again meeting. I complete the class here today. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.